Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we might make a start, I think. There's a few chairs down the front if people wander in, and I'll commence the proceedings by inviting the Mayor to welcome you here this evening.
Thank you, George. Most of you would know me, I guess. Neville Koshenka, the Mayor of the Shire. Also joined by Councillor Sue Ruffles, our new Deputy Mayor over there, and George Cowan, of course, the General Manager, Shane Wilson, the Deputy General Manager for Infrastructure, who can also answer some technical questions. Just before we begin tonight's proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people, traditional custodians of the land that we meet on here today, and pay my respect to past and present. So thank you so much for coming out in numbers. A lot of organisation goes into these meetings, so it's good to be all set out to hear what we have to say, and we hear what you have to say as well, because that's important when our councillors are making decisions. Sustainability has been on the minds of every council in New South Wales, and more than half the councils are looking at what we're proposing to do and put to council for approval, and also off to IPART for approval. So George Cowan will make a presentation, and I'd like to perhaps, if you like, George, after your presentation, but if you're happy to ask questions during the presentation, that's okay as well. So without further ado, I think I'll be George down.
Thank you, Neville. Am I close enough to that mic? Can you hear me okay? If I get a bit drowsy, let me know, please. Now, I've got a PowerPoint presentation in front of me, and Jesse's got it over there controlling the one that's on the wall. So we hope that we can synchronise, but forgive us if we have some minor problems. Was that a question? I'm happy, talking about questions, I'm happy to take them as we go. I find that works better. The proceedings tonight are going to be filmed. You can see the camera there sitting in front of Jess, and after we've completed, it'll go up on the council website alongside the records of the meeting in Narrandera and also the one in Grong. Tomorrow night we're going to San Diego, and we've got a couple more scheduled for Narrandera next week and the week after. So we may as well move on. And first opportunity, if the clicker didn't work.
Still not going? Yeah.
So the first slide discusses the formal acknowledgement of the traditional owners. The Mayor has taken us through that. But that is practice at all the council functions. So I join with the Mayor and the council, and hopefully yourself, in paying respects to our elders and traditional owners. So this is a bit of an agenda that I've put together about to follow for the proceedings tonight. I want to talk about what the council is proposing, why this is happening, what it will mean to you as a landowner, what the expected outcomes are going to look like, and how you can gain more info and also make a submission. And central to getting more information and making a submission is the council website. There's a landing page there that's headed up special variation
and all the background information that you could possibly need is there and available for you. I want to make sure that everyone has a good understanding of the proposal, the process and what is involved. As I said, I'm happy to take questions as we go. One of the things that I won't be doing is arguing with anyone. I value your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion and you're entitled to express it. The purpose of the evening is about information sharing and making sure that you have what you need in order to make a submission to the Council. All of those submissions will finish up at the November Council meeting. So I know why you're here tonight. You're responding to an invitation that you received to come along and listen to this presentation and get more information. I wanted to start by just explaining why I'm here and why the councillors are here. I've been in local government for quite a long time, so one of the bad habits that I've got is I tend to fall into the trap of using local government language a lot. And so I'm going to try very hard to simplify my message tonight, and if I stray from that, don't hesitate to ask me what that means in simple layman's terms. And I'm going to start by being a little bit formal. Local government is controlled by the state government, and they use a number of pieces of legislation to achieve that. The Local Government Act is principal amongst those, but we have a Planning Act, a Roads Act, Public Health Act. There's a list of 70 or 80 of those. And beneath those acts are regulations and guidelines and requirements that we have to meet, and we'll come up against a couple of those later on. This is a section out of the Local Government Act, and it's very early in the piece, and it sets a set of principles that the state government expects every council to abide by. I'm employed on a contract by the council, which is a standard contract for every general manager in New South Wales. And an important part of that contract is a requirement that I make sure that the council complies legally with its obligations. So this is a set of those obligations: responsible, sustainable spending, alignment of revenue and expenditure, which will allow the council to achieve a fully funded position, effective financial management and asset management, adequate reserves, borrowings when we need to, responsible investment in infrastructure, and I'll talk about our infrastructure as we move on, and constant monitoring of options to improve our financial and operating position. And importantly, a provision that was added about 5 years ago, which requires the council to keep in mind intergenerational equity. That means that the current generation has to leave the assets of the community, the lifestyle and the things that the community depends on in a better position, a better condition, and more usable for the next generation. So we can't just afford to burn up everything and not replace as we go. Now we're here to talk about rates, so I want to make something fairly clear right at the beginning. This is a Grong village rate notice. It has a number of components on there. The residential ordinary rate is the first line of that rate notice, and you'll notice that it is in fact an amount of $510. And most of the village is set on that minimum rate. So nearly everyone gets a $510 general rate bill every year. Attached to that, we've got the charges for domestic waste. I'm not really talking about them tonight. The proposed increase only applies to the general rate. It doesn't apply to garbage charges. It doesn't apply to, in other parts of the Shire, water or sewage charges. So it's just the general rate. And as I said, most of the town is on that minimum. If you're a farmer, and I see many farmers in the room, your rate notice will probably only have 2 lines on it. It might have a minimum for the ordinary and then a rate in the dollar. And we'll talk about that in a moment. It's really important to understand the distinction there, because the buckets of money that council manages, some of it comes under the general rate, some of it comes under water, some under sewer, some under waste. We can't cross-pollinate. They all have to stand alone. Thanks, Jess. So before we get into the details of the rates, I want to talk about the historical context and the reasons why the council finds itself in a position where it's coming to you with this proposal. Most of you would, I'm sure, understand the concept of rate pegging. Now, if you don't, I'll just give you a simple explanation. 40 years ago, the then state government decided that it would be expedient, in amongst all the other controls that they have over councils, if they set a limit that the council could increase the general rate by each year. And that makes sense from a political point of view, particularly for trying to win the hearts of those that might be affected by rates. And for the first 30 years of that, the rate pegging limit that was set was an arbitrary figure decided by the Minister for Local Government in Cabinet. And there was never any explanation given to the councils as to how that figure was worked out. And that really annoyed a lot of people in the industry. Eventually, and I think it was 2011, the state government decided that they would rely on IPART to provide guidance and advice and recommendations on what that limit would be. And since then, IPART have had a way of calculating the annual rate peg amount. And when I get to slides later on, you'll be able to identify what those limits are. The point that I want to make is that for every one of those 40 years, the rate peg limit that has been established has been less than the increase in the costs of operating the council. Even now with IPART, they use a bundle of things. They take into account, I think they call it the local government index. And there's some silly things in there. Thankfully, they're reviewing it. But at the moment, they use that index. And again, it's typically, the amount they come out with is typically a bit less than CPI. The impact of that on the councils has been quite profound. I think you could all understand that if your income for 1 year was trimmed so that it was less than your expected and compulsory expenditure in some cases, you'd probably survive. You'd trim, you'd cut, you wouldn't do some things that you were going to do, and you'd make do. And even if that happened for 3 or 4 years, you'd probably be okay. But over 40 years, the effect of having those restrictions on your income is quite debilitating. And councils have to dig into their reserves, and they get less financial, their capacity decreases, and their sustainability falls into question. So that's happened to this council. Now, there's a mechanism to overcome that, and that's why we're here tonight. But one of the practical impacts of that is that there's less money to spend on asset conditioning. Your council owns about $305 million worth of assets and controls a heap of others. And those assets fall into a number of classes. In the paperwork that we have to produce annually, we have to provide a rating of the condition of those assets. At the moment, we've got almost 20% of our assets either rated very poor or poor. The backlog in replacing our assets is about $16 million. And the trend is that position is gradually getting worse. And that's a result of having less money. I mean, if you haven't got it, you can't use it, you can't spend it. The operating costs are going up, so there's less available for asset renewal. At the same time as that's been occurring, the governance that we all operate in, the cost of that's been increasing. So we've got a public service in New South Wales, some driven by the findings of ICAC, some driven by other reviews and reports, but essentially there's an increase in the hoops and jumps that our council has to go over. The latest of those is an organisation which we've got to establish, and their job is to do internal auditing. We've got to meet the requirements of the state government in how they operate, and we've estimated the cost to the ratepayers of doing that. I've got a little table in a moment that'll show you a couple of other practical increases in costs that we're facing. You might remember, I'm sure you do remember, 2022, there was a series of flood events in the Shire. In January, there were flood events based around storms. In Narrandera, that caused flooding in the main street. Houses were inundated, shops were inundated, and Taloka was inundated and evacuated. We had a public meeting just after that, I think in the first week of February, and the community essentially demanded that council do something about it. And in fact were quite strong in their ridicule of the council for not having already addressed the issue. There's a very good reason why it wasn't addressed by previous councils, and that is that they simply didn't have the resources to do it. So following that event, in addition to doing some on-the-job improvements, we've increased the capacity of the current system, improved the inlets, done a bit of work like that. But we've engaged consultants to undergo a full assessment of the stormwater system in Narrandera and design a solution and give us a cost estimate. That cost estimate is standing at somewhere over $16 million. And it involves the construction of a duplicate pipeline, main drain we'll call it, from around the bowling club area, down Bolton Street, through to Adams Street and down into the canal. It's a very substantial project. We've now got the designs, we've got the cost estimates. We believe that we're in a position to go to the government and say, look, we need some help to fund this. And there are some grant programs available. But all of those grant programs require a contribution by the council. Included in the calculations for this increase is an amount to meet the cost of the loan repayments for our share. And I've got a slide with that amount on it. Talk briefly about structural deficits, mainly caused by depreciation. We have to meet the requirements of the local government accounting standard, and I won't go into that in detail because it's quite complex. But one of the things that's happened is a change in depreciation. I think everyone would understand how depreciation normally works. You buy a piece of equipment or a car or a building, You work out how long it's going to last, you depreciate that over the life of the thing, and when it's time you trade it in and buy a new one. That's called historical cost accounting. In 2012, the local government standard was changed, and we can't use that method anymore. What we're required to do is estimate the replacement cost of that asset, whatever it might be, work out what its condition is, how long it's going to last, and calculate the depreciation based on that figure. Our current depreciation cost is about $4.5 million a year as a result of that. Now that compares to a general rate income of $5.5 million in total. So it's a very substantial influence on our financial position. In 2012, the government started a process that they called Fit for the Future, and it was a wretched term, but it simply meant that they required every council in New South Wales to go through a process of reviewing its operations, looking at itself, working out how it could present to the government a proposal that ensured that that council was fit to govern into the future, and if you failed that test, you were on the chopping block for amalgamation. Now this council went through that process, and included in the paperwork on the website is a improvement plan that was born out of that process. There's a lot of individual actions in that plan that identify savings that have already been achieved. Some of those have been in dollar terms, many of them in efficiency terms, and there are a few in there for the future. At the same time, the government introduced a set of about 8 indicators that we have to publish in our financial reports. And again, the financial reports are on our website, and at the back of those reports is a set of graphs that are easily understood. One of the graphs is using the term own source revenue. So the government, state and federal, in concert, they're the people that I write to, that we put applications into for grant funding. Some of you do that. They have published this requirement and have made it plain that they expect the council to raise 60% of its income locally. We can't rely on the state or federal government beyond that margin. Now, over the last few years, our council has failed to meet that benchmark by a fair way. We're down in the 40% mark. Partially that's because of increased grant income, but certainly it's a product of declining revenue expenditure ratios. So we're well below what we need to be in terms of raising money locally. Thanks, Jess. Yes, we are, and I'll talk about that in a minute because that's really, really important, Bob.
So you're saying all income is your locally raised income is compared to all income in that year?
Yes, so the total income...
Total income, including any grants.
Yep.
So next year, as you said, grant income may drop off. So your 40% all of a sudden becomes a much higher figure if your grant income decreases.
That's true.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
What is the forward estimate for those? If you are, because you would have some idea of what the likely drop in grant income would be.
Some ideas right, yes.
Well,
I've got some numbers, Raina, to show you. We are, in addition to the roads grants that are standard, we expect to get about 2.3 million in grants for asset renewal.
How does that compare to the last couple of years?
I think it's going to be quite a reduction. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out where your 40% figure is going to go to if your grant income drops by $2 million.
It'll definitely increase. I don't believe it'll get anywhere near 60%. But yes, having less grants means that percentage will increase, but it also means that the council's got less money to do the things it needs to do. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's higher.
When it's quite a rubby figure in a way, because, in a way, that grant income shouldn't be set against the local income, because that is a figure that can change year to year.
It is. And personally, it goes against my grain absolutely 100%, because I believe that the right thing for every council to do is to pursue every grant you possibly can get. But it's one of the outcomes. And they use it. They say, okay, that's part of the assessment of the council's performance. I thought I'd show you a couple of examples of the cost increases that we, as an organisation, are facing. The most stark of those is electricity cost. And at the moment, we are trying to invest about $500,000 into solar to take the top off this expense. In local government, we rely upon group purchasing for a lot of things, and electricity is one of those. Narrandera Council has been in a group of about 28 councils that has traditionally gone to tender for electricity at the same time. And we've got some really good benefits out of that. As you can see under the column there, 2022, we were able to get electricity for those prices. Now, they are amazingly cheap. We went to tender as a group of 28 councils in December last year, and the result is the prices in the 23 column. In a normal day, in the middle of winter, with low water use and the pool not operating, we spend about $1,000 a day on electricity. In the summertime, when there's a lot of water being used and the pool's in use, that could be $3,000 a day. And it used to be hundreds. So that's just been added to our operational cost. And we've had to find it, and it's been damn hard to find. The pool causes a good chunk of it. No, and unfortunately, we have a very substantial loss on both our pools in Narrandera and in Barellan, and that's typical in every town. I don't know any council that makes money out of their pools. We go to tender for the operation of the pool to try and get as good a result as we possibly can. But in my report on the website, you'll see, I think, the Narrandera pool with depreciation is well over $750,000 a year cost. The entry fee for that facility is $4 a go. Last summer we had 30-odd thousand people through the pool. So that's an income of $120,000. The operator of the pool gets that money, because somehow he's got to find enough money to employ himself, his family and his lifeguards and run the facility. So he's not making much out of it either. So electricity, gone through the roof. Fuel, 2020, now our fuel prices are slightly better than the public fuel price, but even so, diesel's gone from $1.12 to $1.90 in 3 years. And you can imagine how much diesel we use. We've got machines out going all the time. One of the other things that we have to pay is a share of the cost of running the RFS, the SES and the town fire brigades. Our share last year was $249,000. This year it's $362,000. And we don't have any control over that at all. We get the budget for the RFS and SES sent to us with an invoice. And local government in New South Wales contributes a bit over 11% of the budget for those organisations across the state. The insurance companies pay some and the state government pays some. That's our share. So they're not very pretty numbers. Thanks, Jess. Okay, so we're here to talk about rates and what's the current rate structure. So 23, 24 rates, we've got three essential categories of rate. The farmland rate is the lowest rate in the dollar at 18 cents. Under the legislation, the farmland rate has to be the cheapest. It's got to be the lowest. And you'll find that in every council. In this one, it's set at 18 cents. There's a minimum of 510 and the yield is 3.2 million. So our farmers are putting in nearly 60% of the general rate income for the council. Now, I've got residential Grong there. It's a little bit misleading. It's not quite that. It is Grong in terms of rate in the dollar at 69 cents and a minimum of 510. And as I said, nearly all of the properties in Grong are on that minimum of 510. But that residential rate also applies in Barellan and some of the outlying areas like Binya and Kamara, and the yield from that is 236,000. The residential rate in Narandra is 61 cents. It's a slightly different structure. There's a base rate there instead of a minimum rate, but no one pays less than 510 anyway, just the way that it's calculated. 1.5 is the yield from that category. And again, we've got the business rate, and please forgive me, I've got Grong in there, but that also includes Barellan. I think there's a business in Binya. I don't think there's any in Kamara. And the yield there is 90,000. Businesses in Narandra, again, it's $1.64. Now, the business contribution in total is about 9% of the rate income. So that's the starting point for this exercise.
Excuse me, how many residential right now in Narandra?
I've got that figure in a moment, I think, but it's I think it's just under 2,000, and that's the number that's connected to the water supply. So I'd say it's probably pretty close to that. So they're the numbers that I talked about: 58% farmland, 33 residential, and 9 business. It's really important to note that the calculation of those amounts is based on valuations that are provided to the council by the Valuer General. Right across New South Wales, land is revalued every couple of years by that independent body. Normally, they would use a contractor who's familiar with the local area to do that valuation work. They send out notices around the valuation some months before we have to use them, and everyone that owns a parcel of land, you'd be familiar with getting that valuation notice. As I said earlier, charges for water, sewage and waste are set separately and they're not part of this rate calculation. So those percentages that are there are based on the general rate only. So where I talked about IPART setting the rate pegging limit, included in the legislation that establishes that process is a procedure that enables councils that find themselves in a position where they need to increase their revenue, they can use this special variation process. A special variation is an amount that they can increase the rates by above the normal limit. And it can be temporary or permanent. In the case that's being presented to you for consideration now, the increase is permanent. And there are a couple of options which I'll show in a moment. There's 128 councils in New South Wales. 79 of those councils have had to follow this process since 2016. So it's quite common. Some of those councils have been back to the altar more than once. Some local councils here you'd be familiar with. Junee Council has done it. Griffith Council is going through the same process we're going through now. Federation Council has done it. Leeton Council commenced a community consultation last year and finished up not lodging a submission. But that's what happens. It's so now common across local government, it's almost expected. So the options that are before you, on the base case, that shows what the standard rate pegging amount is. In 24-25, IPART have told us that we should use that percentage of 3.5. It hasn't been established in legislation yet, but that's what they've given us to work with, and 2.5 for 25-26. There are two options for the SV. The first one is if it is introduced straight up over 1 year, the percentage increase would be 41.5. If it comes in over 2 years, it would be 25.5 and then 18 in the second year. Thanks, Jess. So both options will generate about the same amount of money. It's 2.3 million. So at the moment, our general rate income's about 5.5 million. This would generate an additional 2.3. These are the things that have been identified as requiring that investment. We want to be able to maintain our existing service levels and fund some of that depreciation. We're not going to be able to fund all of it. It's 4.5 million. We can't do that, but we can fund a good chunk of it. Upgrade the stormwater system in Narrandera. I mentioned that if we get a grant, we'll have to meet our cost of the loan for our share. We think that's about $300,000, but it depends. All the grant programs are different. Flood mitigation grants typically allow for the local council to put in 1/7, but a lot of the grant programs now are worse than that, where you've got to put in 20% or 25%. The federal government, some of their stuff is even higher, but we've allowed for the minimum amount, hopeful that we'll get that grant. I mentioned that we've got a $16 million backlog in assets. We want to start to address that, and $960,000 will be allocated to that challenge. Now that includes roads that need upgrading, buildings that need upgrading, playground equipment, sporting equipment, recreational facilities. Across the board, we need an investment of about that amount. Now, I might mention that we're not trying to get every asset up to good or better or fantastic, because we just can't do that. We believe that there's a good range of assets that are less than good, but fit for purpose. I used the example of the toilet block at the cemetery in Narendra. It's in poor condition, it doesn't get used very much, we keep it clean, it's fine. It meets its purpose, we're not going to touch it. But there's other facilities like parts of the pool at Borellan. If we don't do something about that, it'll fail. Same as the situation we had in Narendra. So that's what's planned there for those assets. And I'll talk about the roads in a moment. I've got a little bit of information there for you. We need to upgrade our technology in the building. Some very clever people 20 years ago bought a computer system for the council that has stood the test of time, but its time's up. It no longer meets the requirements of the organisation or the community or the state government, so we've got to upgrade. We think that upgrading the technology and meeting compliance is going to cost about $250,000 a year moving forward. I want to talk about the staff because this is a topic on Facebook and it's important. At the moment we're going through a process of, I've got consultants in the building, we're going through a process of working out how uncompetitive our salary system is. In the good old days, every position in a council in New South Wales was graded X and paid Y, and it was standard right across the state. In about 93, 94, they threw that out the window and told every council that they had to develop their own salary system, and that had to be based on the competencies and the skills required to do a job. Since that time, there's been competition between the councils to attract good staff, and the salary systems have been becoming divergent. They're moving apart. I want to know whether the salary system that I use is competitive, because it's really hard to attract and keep staff. Now, a lot of people think working for the councils is a bit of a bludge, and we've heard those statements recently. Of course, I reject them outright. I don't think that's right. If it was, I'd have people knocking on my door looking for work. That's not the case. I know our neighbouring councils pay more. So we're allocating $800,000, which is about 8%. Our salary costs a year are about $9.6 million. So they're not quite double the rate income, but they're close. They're up at that level despite the fact that our staff numbers haven't really changed much. We've got about 110 permanent staff. There's a few temps and there's a few part-timers. But that's the number, and it's been that number for quite a long time. I want to be able to match the grants for infrastructure renewal, and I'll talk about that in a moment, and some opportunities like industrial land and the pilot academy at the airport. One of the things that's really critical is that the council has enough resources to respond to challenges. Now, I talked about the floods in 2022. The damage was right across the Shire, not just in Narendra. And in terms of funding flood damage, the state government has a two-tier system. So the council's allowed to go out and undertake emergency repair. And we can simply do that and send the bill in to the government and get paid. We got the first payment for that in September. September this year, not last year. So we had to carry the cost of that work for nearly 18 months, which means that money's had to come out of a bucket somewhere to meet that cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Stage 2 of the flood damage repair is on its way. We're getting that money, we've prepared claims, and it will be approved, and then we can do the next phase of the work. But the council has to be in a position that it can respond if we get an emergency challenge like that. So I can't let the council get down to a point where there's no money in the bank or there's no money in the bucket that I can use, because I can't take money out of water fund to fix potholes, and I can't ask farmers to pay for the water fund. Only people that are connected to the water supply can do that. So that's a really important aspect of this financial challenge. Now, I mentioned some upgrade work. We've got some plans in this part of the Shire, Medium Road and Lismoyle Road. We're going to do some resheet work there, and all of the gravel roads will be given maintenance. But more importantly, we will be in a position to put more gravel on those roads over the next 3 years. At the meeting last night in Barellan, a couple of the members there were suggesting that they wanted council to do more. And I want the council to do more. This process will give the council the resources to address some of those issues, and I'm sure there are roads in this part of the Shire that need work, need upgrade, need maintenance. That's part of that asset backlog that I've been talking about. So let's look at some numbers. Now, I've got the word Narrandera there, but I want you to just think of Narrandera Shire. These are the averages across the Shire. They're not in Narrandera town. And I've got the 3 categories there for your information. So residential, business and farmland. Narrandera, every council in New South Wales is grouped with other similar councils. Narrandera, for statistical purposes, Narrandera is in group 10, and there's 22 or 3 other councils in that group. And in my report and in the paperwork on the website, the full list of those councils is there for you to see. They're all over the state, but they are councils that exhibit similar characteristics to this one. So IPART expect us to make comparisons across that group, and that's the purpose of this slide. So I've had to use 21-22 figures because a lot of councils haven't published their 22-23 financial reports yet. So that information's not yet available. So we're 12 months old, but nevertheless the comparisons are valid. So the average residential rate in the Shire, including Grong, is $699. I mentioned earlier that most of the residential properties in Grong are on the minimum of 510. Not all of them, there's a couple here that are higher than that. And there's some across the Shire that are much higher than that in terms of residential properties. But at 21-22 and now, Narrandera is $150 a year below the average of the Group 10 councils. It's $200 below Leeton and nearly $300 below, it's $400 below Leeton and nearly $300 below Griffith. Now, I know because I get told every day. Our residents expect at least the same standard of facility and quality of life as their neighbours. I believe they get it. In fact, I believe they get better. That's the current situation with the rates. In terms of the businesses, The average figure is 1,233. The group average is 1,676. Leeton is below that. Griffith is well above it, more than double. Now that's a characteristic of regional centres. I think they believe that their businesses are stronger and therefore they can rate them higher. But that's, if you look through those larger centres, that's quite a typical characteristic. In terms of farmland, Narrandera is higher than the Group 10 average, but lower than Leeton and lower than Griffith. If the SV... Sorry, Gemma? No, they're not in the Group 10. I only put them in there because they're neighbours. And they have facilities that you understand. There's not really much point in me talking to you about Kyogle Council or Walgett Council or other members of Group 10 other than the fact that it is a statistical comparison. If the... Yep.
For the likes of people in Vinya or Harellan, the comparison of Leeton and Griffith might be very pertinent. But out here, you happen to live on Commandy Road, you've got Coolum Shire, just across the road. Yet there's no comparison with Coolum, and they're sort of our nearest neighbour.
Yeah.
It may have been advantageous or advantageous to us to be able to see the Coolum.
Yeah, that's true. I couldn't put them all in, and I don't know what Coolaman's rates are. Are they in Group 10? We'll have a look.
Give you an idea about the Coolum rates. A couple of years ago, we paid $3,000 in Narrandera, Coolum was $2,000. That's two-thirds of Narrandera.
Yeah.
And this last rate notice, Narrandera is double Coolum.
Right.
And we just put up property each side of the road.
Yep.
Roads like
Okay.
paying twice as much in Narrandera per acre.
Yeah. Would you say that your land in Narrandera is more valuable than the stuff in Coolaman?
Well, according to the value of general, it is. The value of general's got no idea. My rate is 27%. I'd sell my
Yeah.
farm today for the value of general price. So, and that was the value of general, and, well, here's an example. I've got country that is worth, that according to the value of general, is worth 50% more than country, same country, used in the same way, put it means way. One's RU4, one's RU1, one's RU1, and one's RU4.
Right.
According to the value of general, the RU4 is worth two-thirds of what my country is. Now, I would imagine it should have been went the other way at the very least.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all.
You can't do anything about the value of general.
No.
But it doesn't change the fact that my rates meant pretty much everyone from Randy Road going that way, more from the highway, all the way out to Lander Road, would have had similar increases this year.
Every time I sit down with the valuer general, and when they do a valuation, they normally come and present to the council, and we ask them those same questions. They say that the valuations that they use are determined by sales in the area of similar properties. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but we do have some very valuable farmland. No risk.
When the value of general today is more than what a realistic sale value is, how can anyone say that they are doing their job? Not being argumentative here, but
No, I understand where you're coming from.
and when their valuation this year was done on property sales from 50 and 60 kilometres away.
That's quite possible. One of the things that I can't do, and you can do, is challenge that figure. I don't have a legal right to do it. But you do. when you get your valuation notice, if you don't like it, you should dispute it. Because they make mistakes. There's an anomaly in Grong that I believe should have been fixed. But it's up to the landowner to do that.
Well, it's only, I don't know how long the online system's been up for, on the valuation side of things. It's showing like but at least now you can see what properties are valued at by the value agent and how they've come up with the valuation.
Right.
Which, I don't know how long after I get my rates note, my valuation, that information becomes available. Otherwise, the only way I can know what another valuation is actually being up on top, asking him.
Yeah, you can't.
When you get your valuation, you go, oh, that's gone up, but you would assume everyone's still up.
Yeah,
Gone up by, well, triple in 5 years, and others have doubled in 5 years.
yes, and the increase has not been consistent across the Shire. For the last two valuations, the properties in the northern end of the Shire have gone up by more than the ones here and in the southern part, generally speaking. There's property sales up around Barellan that are at $3,000 an acre. And those sorts of transactions are driving some of these numbers.
Oh, yeah, but that's 57
It is. Yeah. You need a good crop. So where was I? If the increase as proposed goes through, the right-hand column will give you an indication of the impact on the residential average would go to 1,078. Now that's much higher than most of the residential properties in Narrandera, which would go to 720. That's higher than the Group 10 average, but still much lower than Leeton and Griffith. In terms of the businesses, it's lower than the average for the Group 10s. It's higher than Leeton, but it's half Griffith. The one that many of you will be interested in is the farmland increase. And I advised the meeting in Barellan last night that one of the issues that you should consider if you're making a submission is whether the balance is right. So at the moment, 58% of the income comes from the farmers. Is that right? Do you think the council should look at that? That's just an historical figure. It's been there and like that since well before I came to council. But the result is that our farmland average will go to 5,700. And that is above the Group 10, Leeton and Griffith.
Just from those figures, yeah, I mean, it's higher than the Group 10.
Yes.
A couple of thousand for the average, for some larger farmers, it would be $10,000 and more. And you went through slides before saying how the council's fuel has gone up and the council's electricity, but you know, the farmers' fuel and electricity and fertiliser and chemicals, etc., have all gone up.
I understand. Yes.
And the extra slug of another sort of $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. It's a big slug.
It is. Yeah, it's very big. Well, that number's in September. It's probably a bit more than that now, but yes, there's a fuel tax involvement there. That's a very valid point. And I've talked about making a submission. By all means, point those things out. So this table is just a summary of those minimums. Residential business Narrandera, farmland, and you'd be surprised at how many properties only pay the minimum. or nearly all of Grong, nearly all of Barellan. And a good chunk of Narrandera only pay around the minimum. They pay a bit more than that, but it's in that order. So if it went... Sorry? I can't tell you. I've only got the overall. I haven't got... But I've got a thing here that'll show it. So this is Narrandera residential, and I'm only doing these for option 1. There are 1,476 properties in Narrandera that would have an increase of less than $325. There's a further 19% that would be less than $500. But there are a few where that increase is more significant. 9 would have an increase of greater than $1,000. And that's a lot if you're in a residential situation. It's not deductible unless you've got some business associated with it. So they're real numbers. For the other residential properties in the Shire, including Grong, 92% of those properties are on the minimum and will only pay an increase of $210. But again, there's a few at the top end that'll face a greater increase. This is the Narrandera businesses. You've got your skates on there, Jess. Go back. There it is. Woo, stop. So the numbers are greater in the business area, obviously. They're paying $1.60 rate in the dollar, and so the increases are going to be more substantial. But even so, there's still over 200 properties that will have an increase of less than $1,000. That's $200 an instalment. And if you're running a business, it's probably not a lot. But again, there are some at the top end where the increase would be more than that. Farmland, we've talked about how much greater the increases are. 20% of the properties are less than $500. The average, I think the average farmland increase is going to be around $1,500, and that is worked out on a farm valued at about $2.25 million. Might be just a fraction under that, but it's in that order. And you're right, Raina, there are some where the increase is going to be greater than 10,000. All of those properties are in the bottom end of the Shire. 5 of the 7 front the river. The other 2 are on Yanko Creek. And they're all very substantial properties. Nevertheless, it's a substantial increase. And there are 20 between 5 and 10.
The figures are good. They are a little bit deceiving though, in that you are going off the rates notice itself, the numbers.
Yes.
Now some are 200 hectare plots, some are 400 hectare plots. Okay? It would be a much more accurate figure if, on the farmland side of things, it's $1 per hectare increase. Because those figures, $1 per hectare figures, they're getting quite scary, I'll tell you. Alright? Don't worry about the per rate notice, because as I said, some blocks are 40 hectares, some blocks are 200 hectares. Just to say that, you know, you've got 5 200 hectare blocks going up by X amount, when Bruce owns 3 of them, and 2 other people own 1 each, his costs are going up a fair bit more, because he owns the land.
Yeah. I don't have that information, and I guess you could work it out, but our computer system, there's no chance of working that out. Yeah. Yeah.
We've got the hectares on the ratepayers. We've got the cost per value on the ratepayers.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it.
And then you compare those figures to the other 20,000.
I've got no chance of getting that information at all. And the Mayor's rightly asked that question when you compare farmland rate in Narandra Shire to, say, Leeton or Griffith. The farm sizes are different and the productivity is different. It's very difficult to get a really good apples with apples. Sir. Yeah. Absolutely, I can. Yes, and thank you for pointing it out, and congratulations on having the foresight to think about the longer term when you were on council. It's an issue. Long-term financial sustainability is an issue for local government in every town. It can be addressed by reducing expenditure, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That's the other side of the coin. Yeah. No. As well, there's some difference. So we get income from rates, and if we're fortunate, we get income from grants. But we don't really have a lot of control over our total income. We do have control over our expenditure, and we can make decisions. Councillors can make decisions. I make decisions. Shane, in managing the staff, yes. But we don't have a product that we can sell for X amount. That's one of the differences. And in fact, a lot of the products that we do produce and sell, the community would like to get them for nothing or a small fee. So we are regularly asked, please waive the fee for this or that or the other thing. Keep the entrance fees down. We want to exhibit our stuff in the art centre, but we don't want to pay a higher fee. The ratepayers have to pay that cost. Indeed, you are. And my hat just goes off to you. Absolutely.
What's missing in the equation
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate what you're saying, and you're probably repeating yourself from previous meetings and other occasions. I would welcome your submission along those lines.
I am repeating myself, please, people don't know that I'm also qualified and have done internal auditing. So I see things, observe things, and I try to accept them. There are times when I see we can tighten the whole procedures up. We have a manager who walks around town called a locally supervisor and community contact officer. You would really be in that position? Question mark. I'd like to see our council really question you, through you, the staffing of our place and have a proper restructure which has not been done. We have a report saying, oh, we don't really think it's fine, but we need to get into it,
You're right, mate. Thanks, Bob. As I said, I'd welcome your submission, and please, if your submission and everyone, please just pray for our mayor. But if your submission is suggesting that the proposal that you're considering here should not go ahead, and there are alternate processes, let us know how you feel about those. Make your suggestions about areas where you believe there could be some tightening up.
Might I ask, George, when was this report finalised? With the report on council's financial situation by Morrison Lowe?
It was done progressively, Raina. The first part of the work was focused on assets, and that work was completed a little while ago, 2 or 3 months. The first draft of that went to the council, I think, in April or May, but the most recent reports were only just completed prior to the September council meeting.
I'm referring to the capacity pay report in there.
Yeah, that was done.
Quite a while ago,
The capacity to pay.
21, 22 it says here, based on figures from that period, 21, 22.
Yeah, it's based on the census figures.
Well, yep. Didn't take into consideration, well, obviously, based on the census figures, that's where they got their increase in income from as well, is that correct?
Yes, look, I've got a slide on the capacity to pay report. It's 4 or 5 down. Can you just hold off on that? Yeah, of course.
It's relevant because the figures are from 21, 22.
It's very relevant.
The slide on council costs showed before, things have changed a fair bit even in the last 4 months.
That's true.
Therefore, the capacity to pay report, you can argue, is probably well and truly out of date. And really, if council are going to rely on that report in this submission to the New South Wales government, you'd probably be doing a disservice to the ratepayers, to be honest. Because the figures in this capacity pay report would no longer be relevant, as Bob and Bruce pointed out before. With what states here.
Okay, I'd like to put the slide up before we get into the detail, if you don't mind. Yeah, so just hold off and I'll come straight back to you. All right. Thank you, Jesse. In addition to looking after assets and providing services, there's a number of other future challenges that the community, parts of the community, not all of them, are asking the council to look at. But obviously, everyone wants to maintain the quality of life. I get asked all the time, what's the council doing about pursuing economic growth? Jess is here, right? No, don't go off that one. You've moved that. Yeah, so pursuing economic growth, that's something that everyone values. They want the council to develop opportunities for new businesses to come to town or for the provision of jobs, particularly for young people. One of those opportunities is the Airline Pilots Academy. I want to put the council in a position where we can respond to Rex and maybe get that academy here in the Shire. That'll be one of the biggest businesses that we have got if we can land it. We've sold all the land in the industrial estate and some of that stuff's being developed. There's some major new businesses on their way to town, but we need now to expand that area so that there's future opportunities. And we can then be in a position to attract and support more new industry. Everyone wants population growth. We're going backwards as a shire. Now, some of that's a natural process, I understand that. Farms are getting bigger, families have long since left in many cases, in many areas. Farms are being taken over. I was told last night of 2 more farms in Borellan that have been sold, and that will mean the loss of another family. So it's natural for the population to go down, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help when we're trying to get grant income. On top of those things, there's a wish list. And that wish list includes things like public housing. We can't even think about getting involved in that. Aged care, there's a group of seniors in Narrandera that want the council to get into independent living. We just can't do it. Lake Talbot needs deepening. We know it's going to cost $2 million. We got some money to do the environmental studies, and we hope we can get a grant to actually deliver that, because not only is that an important asset for our community, it's a good regional asset. The koalas, I mentioned last night the Borellan flood levy. That's a project estimated to cost about $5.5 million. It falls into the same category as the stormwater in Narrandera. We need to be able to find our share of that cost. None of this stuff is costed in the proposal that you've got. But what we believe will happen if it goes ahead is that the council will, over time, have the capacity to make some decisions about these things and be in a position to pursue state and federal governments for help where it's needed, where it's available. You mentioned affordability. On the website, there's a capacity to pay report prepared by consultants. It's not my work. The numbers that are in it are out of the census. So you provided them, not me. What that report reveals is that our community is very stratified, I think is the word. There's a significant section of the community that are well below the level of socio-economic advantage. So they are disadvantaged. A lot of them live in rental accommodation, some of that's public housing. It's typically of a low standard. There's another group of those folk who own properties, and many of those people are pensioners. But I showed the figures. Most of those people are looking at an increase of between $200 and $300. It will be hard for them to find, but it's not unachievable. And pensioner rebates and hardship policies apply. Now, Raina, you mentioned that those numbers are out of date. And one of the figures that's in that comparative, I found it quite difficult to believe, but it's proved in the census data. The average household savings in Narrandera increased significantly between the 16 and 21 census. There are probably reasons for that. I'm not sure what they might be, whether they were reflective of successful harvests. I'm not sure. But they're real numbers out of the census. We didn't influence them at all. We engaged Morrison Lowe because they're used to doing that and they've got the tools to do the analysis. And that's the outcome. So there are likely to be people who need help. We've got a hardship policy and the pensioner rebates will apply. Now, Raina, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I'll leave that. We're not using the figures from 2016 to 21, but as your slide said before, showed before, a lot has changed in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
As we all know, as council knows.
Yes.
Therefore, you know, if you use that report in your submission to the state government, I don't think you're doing the right thing by the way. Because that, I know that's the report you've got. I know that's gone off and proven. But, you know, it's okay saying we've got increases, but there's been CPI increases the last 12 to 14 months, which has just been ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
Reflected in your hardship and capacity pay report. And they are actually real figures available from the ATO and, you know,
Yeah.
that's the point I'd like to make on that.
All right, I'll take that on board. No, it didn't help us either. No. So I want to talk about outcomes, and there are two possible outcomes, at least two, possibly more. If the special variation goes ahead, it would, I believe, ensure the financial sustainability of the council and remove ongoing deficits into the future. Now, I take on board the comments of the ex-councillor, and that will be dependent upon the strength of future councils in sticking to the task and not being diverted to other things. Because believe it or not, that happens. We'd continue to deliver the current services and we could address the asset backlog. We can't remove it, but we can get the line starting to trend up. We could do the technology and compliance upgrades and we'd be competitive, I believe, in the labour market.
Now, with regards to the labour market, because we put up earlier $800,000,
Yeah.
would that be a year-on-year increase? Would there be the same increase every year in your expectation?
There'd be one increase, but it would carry on. Yes, so it's going to cost about that much each year.
Each year?
Yeah,
So your wages will go up by $800,000 a year?
I think so. Well, it'll go up by 800 in the first year and it'll stay at that level, other than the normal wage increases that occur naturally anyway. But it's an ongoing cost.
So it won't go up by, yes.
It won't be an additional 800 each year, no. No, I'd like a job like that. That'd be great. But yes, I'll get Shane to talk about that in a moment, but Gemma had a hand up about the wages thing, I think. Yeah. I mentioned the number 110. I think it's around that figure. As I said, there's a number of part-timers, there's a number of casuals, but it's been... quite typical. Yeah, yeah. There's a core requirement. If you have a library, for example, you can't have one person in the library. You've got to have a minimum of 2, and you've got to have 2 there all the time. And if you do a mobile library, and a couple of those staff go round the shire with the mobile library, that's additional staff. Even so, you've still got to have that resource. Go into the building if we're talking about computers and IT. So. No. Well, I've talked about some of the things that have caused this issue, and they're real costs, and I know in every business, in every farm, you face the same situation. One of the things about the labour market is that at a simple level, I need a grader driver that's competent. I need a plant. I can't get a plant operator. We've advertised for backhoe operators almost every second month for 5 years. We've got some. We need more. We can't get them. The best backhoe operators in the area are employed by Boots & Co, and they're paid double what I can pay. Now, I don't want to get to that level, but I need to be a little bit more competitive. At a professional level, I expect our engineers to be able to design a road, a bridge, we've just built 2 bridges. Engineers in other shires might not have those challenges. I need a town planner that can handle complex DAs. I need IT staff that can run the most complex IT. Just because we're a small council doesn't mean that we have to do without those skills. I don't need 10 of them, but I've got to have a couple. And so it's really important that at the end of the day, I can offer enough to attract someone. We've just brought 3 staff from Melbourne. Hopefully they'll settle. Who knows? They might bring their families, add to the community. That's the sort of challenge that we've got there. So it is really important. Now, whether it finishes up being 8% or 10% or 12 or 4, I can't really say. But it has to be something. So that's the outcome if this thing goes ahead. If it doesn't, what's the reality? The reality is that I can't continue to operate the council as you expect, as it is now. We've already been told that some of the grant programs that we've relied on are drying up. So Stronger Country Communities has been part of our life for 5 years, 6 years maybe, nearly. I think it came along with about the emergence of Steph Cook as our local member and her friend John Barilaro, who was the deputy. They introduced that money, and it has built improvements right across the shire. It's finished. We can't rely on that anymore. The grant program, we made an application for money to fund the expansion of the industrial estate. That grant program no longer exists. State government have just wiped it. Some of the road programs, the same. So how do projects like the Narandra stormwater upgrade happen? If there's no grant program, they certainly won't happen, but if we don't have our share, it becomes even more problematic. Some of the opportunities that I talked about will be lost. There's an inevitable reduction in staff numbers, and there certainly won't be any significant increase in salary. So that's a gloomy picture, but it is real. So if the council makes the decision not to apply, the next decision they make will have to be to review service levels and fees and charges and try and bring the expenditure down. And that'll mean that there'll be less, not more. So we've been through all the issues. There's a lot of information available. All of that extra information is on the website. I'd invite you to go there, have a look at what's on that landing page. There's two things there that are important. One is the little rate online estimator for your rates. I know it's in the letter that you got. You just type in your assessment number and it'll tell you what the expectation is for option 1 and option 2. More importantly, there's a Have Your Say page where you can type in a submission without having to go to the trouble of filling out the form that you've got. You're welcome to do that. You're welcome to send in an email. What I mentioned earlier is important. If you believe the council should not proceed, give them somewhere to go. Make some suggestions about how you believe the difference can be made up, because they're going to need it. Now, if you're unable to get on the website, and I know the internet out here is crap, all you've got to do is ask, and I will provide you with a hard copy. Don't do that unless you really want it, because there's hundreds of pages. But I do understand that not everyone has that access.
How much rateable land has been lost in recent years through things like, well, we've seen it, I know it happened in Narandra Shire, but things like national parks buying rural property, they no longer pay rates, native title claims, all of a sudden land that used to be rateable is no longer producing any rates for the council. How much of that's been lost over the last recent years?
Not very much. We're not affected by those things to the same extent that other councils are. There have been a small number of Aboriginal land claims determined, but actually when that happens, the opposite is the effect. So that those land claims relate to previously unrateable Crown land. If the claims are approved, that land becomes privately owned in normal title and rateable. But we're not really affected by native title. There's been no native title claims in our shire yet. I've had a couple of people come and see me talking about that issue, but I don't know any Aboriginal folk that can establish their long-term connection to the land in this area. I haven't met one yet, but there may be some out there. But we haven't had any native title claims. So no, that's not really an issue. This is the community engagement program. We're at step 3, about the middle. There's a couple more, one tomorrow night at Sandigo, and then 2 more in Narandra. So if you know people that couldn't make it tonight, they're welcome to come along next week. That's a morning meeting on the 18th and an evening meeting on the 26th. So you don't have to live in Narandra to be at that. Everyone is welcome. I want to, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, make sure that everyone's got a good understanding of what's being proposed, what it means for their property, and how to make a submission. The submissions are steadily flowing in at the moment. I'm not sure, I haven't kept a count, but it's about 2 to 1 against, objecting to the proposal, and 1 in support. If you are making a submission, please take the time to have a think about how you believe the council could make savings or cuts in expenditure, as I indicated earlier. So that's it. No, I won't close, but that's the presentation on the rates. You've got the council here with you. You can raise any other issue you might like, and I'm happy to start, Bob, with the culvert. Oh, sorry, should have gone on that. Go back 1. All the submissions will be gathered and presented to the councillors at the November council meeting, and that's when they will decide whether to proceed with an application to IPART. The application to IPART has got to be lodged by early February, and IPART will advertise that proposal here in the community again, and you'll have another opportunity to lodge submissions directly with them. They will make a determination that will come back to the council, I'm thinking late April, early May, and council will make a decision whether to proceed at the next following council meeting. If it's implemented, it will start in 24-25, unless, yes, it will be implemented in 24-25.
When you've got clients for money, whether it's to buy a car, whether it's to pay your rates, buy your groceries, you have a disposable income or taxable income. And the people who have a 9-to-5 job, in Grong and Randall, whatever, their disposable, their taxable income, $70,000, $80,000 or whatever. And it might be the same for a farmer. In many years it's less, some years it's more. But we seem to be paying 10 times more of this cost burden than what the non-rural ratepayer is. So most people who are living in town looks like they might have a $200 to $300 increase, whereas I know I'm going to be paying for $2,500 to $3,000 more. So that's coming out of the family taxable income.
Yeah.
It seems to be disproportionate, and I'm just wondering whether there's a way around that to make it more equitable per family, not per landlord.
And I mentioned earlier that in your submission that's a valid point to make. The balance that we've got at the moment, is it right? It's historical, it's been there for a long time. I'd be happy for submissioners to be saying to council, well look, we believe you should look at this balance and perhaps transfer some of the load to other parts, either residential or business. And you notice in those comparatives, all the councils are different in how they apportion the rate burden. Here at the moment, it's heavily weighted towards the farmers. There's no doubt about that.
Unfortunately,
Yep.
And you mentioned as well, George, in that, according to that census and the data that was put together by Morrison, whatever they call themselves, you know, net savings almost doubled during that period, that 5 year period.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that. Now, I can see that you're going to use this, if council decides to go ahead with this variation, you will use that probably word for word in your submission to state government.
We actually have to submit that report in total, completely.
However, if that's what it is, saying net savings almost double, what is that figure? Did net savings double from 5,000 to 10,000, or did net savings double from 40 to 80,000? And, you know, it's okay going off the census, and that data will probably be in the census data, I would say.
I think it is.
Yeah, or not?
I think it is. I can't remember the form myself, but in the report.
In a place like Amanda and Grong, plenty of pensions about, plenty of people, you know, paying the rates of their pension or their super retirement funds, whatever.
Yeah.
Saying that net savings doubled is probably being a little bit lackadaisy on the data, because, as I said, there's a huge difference between net savings going from $5,000 to $10,000 or $2,000 to $4,000, and if net savings going from $40,000 to $80,000.
I don't think it was anywhere near 80. I've got 30. Yeah.
There's no point saying that net savings doubled if it was a very small increase. If it was, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 over a 5 year period, which is what we're talking in census. That is not a doubling in net savings in today's society with what's happened over the last 2 years. And again, I'd be very disappointed if that went into the application as a justification.
For a rate increase of this magnitude.
The justification for the increase is in the need.
Oh, there's the need, but this will be part of it.
But yes,
Not the justification, but the ability of the ratepayers to bear the burden.
yes, I require that to be made. So you're making a valid point, Raina. It may be that if council decides to go ahead, that that report can be updated with more current figures than the census data.
Put a figure to it. Don't just put washing, doubling or 50% increase or something. Put a figure to it. If the figure's available, which I'm pretty sure it probably is, put the figure to it.
Well, the figure's in that report, right? The figure is in that report. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I've got to remember that it's around 30,000. But please don't quote me because I don't have the report in front of me. But it is on the website for everyone to have a look at. But I think the point that George made, for an update on that to the current figures, I'm taking that on board.
As I said, there are a lot of pensions in Grong, you know, and are relevant to that data, which a rate increase will impact them quite significantly.
Indeed. Are there other issues, questions? Okay, we'll go back to the culvert report.
I think everyone's interested in that. It's easy important to know publicly.
Yeah, so as was discussed earlier, Bob, that those works didn't fall under the administrative, they fell under the next section of flood repairs. So we had to talk with the detailed designs being complete. The review of environmental factors is just being finalised. We go on in this month, at which time the fisheries permit will be issued and we're ready to start construction. So I'm hoping within the next 6 weeks that we've got machines here and getting ready for it.
Right, so you have the money.
Sorry?
You have the money to do it.
Yeah, the money's there, so the money's now been approved. Where the problem was it's very hard when you lose, it's not the only one, we've got another one up near Barella. There's actually even worse, it's a 27 kilometre bypass that we really have to take there to get around that one. It's a little bit more complicated, and it needs a full review of environmental factors. It's a major study required, it's been used as a fish. But because we're building something new, it just wasn't a repair. It took the extra level of approval to get the funding, but they had funded that and that area was the design. So
Great, thanks.
Other issues?
I mean, just a question, when you said about, the waste generate income, Barella is about to run the sewage system.
Yes.
Then I think it's a one-off fee per household of about $1,600.
Yeah, 1622.
Yeah, so, just by way of comparison, I own property in Ganmain, when Coolidge sewage Ganmain. Now, on my rates over a period of about 9 years, there was the pay down for me as beneficiary, as the owner of that home, on the connection to the sewer. Now, the difference was Coolidge had an opt-out system. You could choose to have your property connected to the sewer or not. But if you chose to, you really significantly as a homeowner over a long period of time contribute to that connection fee.
Yeah, what we've decided to do is to apply the standard charge that applies in Miranda. So if you own a vacant property in Miranda and you build a house and connect to the sewer, the fee is $1,622.
That's existing infrastructure, George. You're building all new infrastructure.
What we also did though, we calculated in the grant process. So the connections and the like when you're referring to, we actually bundled up in the grant. So we're not covering the entire cost of it. It was also the only way that we're ever going to get compliance. Lebanon and everyone else is still chasing now because they had when you want to connect, just let us know arrangement. The only way we're ever going to get the community to connect is that socio-economic issue of the people who can afford it and the others can't, they won't do it. And now in most cases, they were the highest risk sites that needed to be connected. So we couldn't let someone that had the money and connect them in, yet people next door who had a failing septic system, we couldn't let that happen. So we council decided to take that plunge and connect everyone, because then we know that we've got compliance across the board. And yes, like the sewer fund, so it doesn't affect this charge, but it's out in the sewer fund, and it was considered as a holistic lifetime benefit, I guess.
Generally, what you're saying is you think that's too low?
Yeah, that. In terms of the benefit over the property lifetime.
Yeah, you might be, that might be quite a dull view to have. The scheme will pay the cost of those loan repayments, the construction that's occurring up there, for our share of the cost.
I mean, I only bring it up as two completely different models.
Yeah. Hopefully, out of it, the community will get the health benefit and the property value benefit of having a nice tidy sewage scheme instead of failing old septics. And no one likes that at all.
How many properties have we got?
300.
300 actually. I mean, I think it's about 240 dwellings. We're already seeing applications are looking for new dwellings now.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else?
Yeah, I want to make a point. Living out here, we haven't got curb and guttering, so shouldn't that be taken off our rates? Because I haven't got curb and guttering in front of my house. A lot of us haven't. But you're making us pay the same rates in what Miranda would say. Well, why haven't we got what Miranda's got?
There are many properties in Miranda that don't have curb and gutter. Believe me, many. And in fact, there's no program that I know of to expand the network of curb and gutter anywhere. The vast majority of the cost of the council operation goes into services that are provided in Miranda, in Grong, in Barella, through the rural community, and a lot of those services are in the building. They're not out on the road, although we do roads and drainage and parks and all those sorts of things, but A lot of the other services are soft services that are available. They're a little bit further away from you. But nevertheless, they're still there if you go to the marina, you're welcome to go to the library, you're welcome to go to use any of the recreational facilities, etc.
And another thing too, the tractors that come and mow the lawns on the side of the road. We get that once in a blue moon. The grasses that are on the other side of the road, because we've got vacant blocks there, it's knee high. We very rarely get someone with a slasher that comes out and does our sides of the roads in the town. Very rarely.
Yeah, it's a little bit hit and miss, I confess, but I would like you just to think that there's lots of areas in Shire where the council doesn't mow any grass at all. The council doesn't mow the grass in front of my house.
Doesn't in front of mine because I do it.
That's right.
Or
And
the
so
friends
do I.
do it for me.
Yeah, and most farmers do it too. They slash around their entrance.
But what
ways
about
and
property
back
that
ways.
hasn't got anyone living on them?
If the council has it, contact us, and we will contact the property owners and the like. We do that. In the Randwick, we do that every other day in the Randwick. We write letters to property owners that aren't maintaining their property. And that's so exactly the same rules here. And we will write that for those people, and hopefully they come on board and we usually do a list of people that can provide that service.
Now, there was a lady who been told.
Sorry.
I don't know whether you realise it is very, very tough times. Now, cover at all time low, that's what we do. It's only our Western country that's kept us going because the rates are so much cheaper out there. We're battling, really battling. And we've been through 20 years pretty much of drought. There's a couple of floods thrown in there that only do waters. The river country is not precious. We don't grow up on the river. It's hard country, but you decide to rate it high. That's fine, if you want to do that. But tell you what, we pay $50,000 rates here, and you say they're going to pay $10,000 more, well, it's way more. If you're paying 48%, it's way more than $10,000 each year. But you've just got to, this lady, I know she wants to curb and gutter, and why mow the lawns? I do everything. I work 7 days a week, and I work 16 hours a day. I don't go to town. I don't enjoy all these things, but I'm glad that town people do, that's lovely. But, we don't expect that. We expect to do it a bit more ourselves, and we're really happy if you can keep the costs in and not rate us and get some independent thing. If you have to raise the rates a bit, that's cool, but to get an independent person in that just overrules you and demands massive increases, it's just not sustainable. Farming is not very sustainable. It's usually run with a loss. That's the reality. We're like you, we run at a loss a lot of times.
Well, please take the opportunity to put this commission.
Just with that, you're a fixed, as Bruce mentioned there, elsewhere, it's a rising scar. You've got to deal with your, it's like compound interest. It's going up. Our generation is coming up, the next generation coming up, so they don't sustain that. No way, not at 50%. They can't keep going. But we consider that we're pretty good at what we do, and as Rosemary said, we do work hard. And there's a lot here in this room that I know that has worked actually hard too, being farmers. And look, I think having a bit of respect to say that the council is going to get a fixed, Newsways are going to get a fixed price at the end on this rising scale. We haven't got no fixed figure at the end to work to. The cattle market 1 minute's up here like that, the next minute's down like that. Whether it's cattle, sheep, pigs, or what that's what this is about. I don't think you're getting the picture. And I'll tell you something else, if you want to run a business, look, the old mate here, cut expenditure. Don't employ the 3 blokes from Melbourne. Get boots to do it. Get rid of the gear. And you'll go ahead. Just cut back on all the things because there are too many variables. How many people you'll work with?
I think we settled on 110.
110. My business is nearly the biggest this. And you know how many I've got on it? About 4. So that's your answer. If you want to go ahead, cut the daylights out, cut expenditures. I should know, because I've come from a pretty successful background. How to make it quick, and that's it. If you've got to start thinking about how to make it quick, or how to save it quick. I know your business is different than mine, but if you've got too many variables, that's where it goes. And machinery is not a good thing. I know we've got some fellas here, but only through them maintaining and working so well, one at the back and one here, and half a dozen more here that have done very well too, we have a machine. But you're employing blokes to look after this grader, and it's worth $500,000. Are they going to look after it as good as this bloke knows? No. So get out of that business.
And you suggested so we need machinery to grade.
Get birds, as you spoke earlier, it's let it out to private enterprise.
I've still got to pay him.
Yes, but it's a lot different, You've got to figure it all us, you're coming back to us to get a fixed figure, to keep paying those blokes, those $100 blokes, and the greater type blokes. What you've got to do is get your fixed figure on your contract. So you know at the end of the year how much it's costing. You don't know. And that's your problem. That's why you're here today, and that's why they only go in. Because they break, don't they? The council break. Because they don't know where they're going and where the figure is at the end of the year.
So just
The first thing I always ask, where are we sitting? Every week, I know exactly where I'm sitting with my business. Just on that computer all the time.
Just with your contractors, in the last 12 months, every single contractor has put a request in for a 30% increase on their hourly rate.
Well, just
Every single contract, including the ones you reference.
I'm hearing that.
So,
Have you gone further afield? Have you put it out further?
absolutely, every single contractor, including ones that have been with us for 10 years.
I know the plight you're in, but
Yeah, but
I'm hearing that. I'm hearing exactly what you do. I went to what a year two over the last year, and I'm listening to the same stuff junk like But listen, what you want to do, mate, is sell the junk. Go and sell all the grades, get a few bob in, and you won't get up your sleeve, and you'll have the PR over what you want done. As it is now, the work that he's got the power over you. I didn't have that, I don't have that, because I need to be in control, because I look after my work man, either way, and look after other people too.
Well, he drives it himself. He's on it himself, so you can drive. If he can drive, you can drive. Well, business like you can drive, you can drive.
I used to be able to drive a tractor, I spent 30
Well, soon as I get out, and the outside over there, it's quite 50 years old.
I've never had another grade.
You need to phone service so you can still run your business, though. We need to get more houses. But the rubbish, one more thing, the rubbish down there, go like just up from the lady with the.
Hang on a second. You said, one conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, guys. We've got to talk about rubbish.
A question about the rubbish down the river flowing into the Bundaberry Creek, down into the bridge, straight down the Grong River Road, into the entrance of my property. That rubbish has been blown there for the last probably 4 years. It keeps on getting built up and blowing from the north to the south into the creek.
Well, the poor little township haven't got a tip. They've got a guard down there. They put it in front of their place down there. They're blowing into the bottom creek. So this is the council.
One way they get rid of, stop things is to get rid of it.
All right, have you got any other issues?
You're talking about rubbish, we have to skip into my program because it's so overflowed every month.
Whereabouts it's all skipping, in your
I'm forever picking up rubbish.
Yeah, but my view, no more skip bins. Everyone should have a wheelie bin. If they've got
Everyone's
stuff,
got a wheel.
if they've got material that's excess to a wheelie bin, you can get it in and around a tip for nothing. And that's where it should be going.
Good, get rid of the skip bin.
Is there another vote on that? Is there support for that?
I think I'll move it. I think we have to discuss it.
Obviously, we're not going to take it back to the road.
No, this is why can't the frequency of emptying be more often, or a bigger skip bin?
Or two.
Not everyone has a ute to take their rubbish to the tips.
You know that I've been in Miranda for 6 years, and I've got a wheelie bin, and I've never taken anything to the tip.
Well, good luck to you.
And I don't live in a big collection of rubbish.
That's the sort of thing you want to, get into the council, get rid of the rubbish and have it a bit smaller so it's contained. As it is, you've got all the garbage, there's so much, you're open to so much when you employ so many people. I appreciate what you do, $100, but I think there's a better way of managing it. You're really showing us that you can't run your business, that's why you're here today.
Well,
Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, what I said at the beginning of the meeting was that I would respect everyone's view, and I certainly respect yours.
Thank you, and I respect yours, but I think have a look at your business yourself. Don't worry about that. We keep paying. If we pay, do we ever run short? If we do, well, there's a problem in it. Like we get into heaps of trouble if we don't pay our rates and don't pay our bills.
One of the things that is a feature of Miranda is that our rate payments are right up as high as anyone could expect. So that I think we're at 96%, 95%. Many shires it's 90%. The ratepayers are tremendous in meeting their obligations. There's no doubt about that.
When you get this increase, you watch out. Some people think it's the bit that breaks the camel's back.
Well, since I've been down at Grong, I give you 1.5 million at least that we pay this one. More. Since I've been at Grong. So I should have a gold plated road out front, but no, look, it's fine. I don't expect that. I don't expect any more privileges than anyone else. But listen, look out for the farmers because you'll have enough and you'll be right out on you, I tell you. If we start pulling out, you'll have no bread, you'll have no.
All right, we've got any other
I know something else about what's going, the size of the hole where the gravel's came out of the back road has come out of his farm. So he has looked after, he's done his bit for trying to share around with the council, as well as pay the rates. He just said the size of the hole out there, it's a huge gravel pit. That's what puts the base down on the old Green Road.
Yeah, let us have to get gravel to put on the road, just to help out. And then he bought used plates to do the garden and whatever, Roger's out and checked as well. Have a look at it.
That's tremendous.
But you start looking up, I want to see the Miranda Council being full of noise and making plenty of money. You've got to get your head around it. You've not got it right, have you? Why, tell me, you can't tell me that you've got it right.
One thing you don't have is community expectation.
Sorry?
You don't have community expectations in your business.
Right.
You have your business expectations, you don't have.
Oh, he supports.
Yeah, but what about the floods and the droughts and the, you're taking something on here and the other that. We're on the boards. Did you have your vehicles and that break down? We have that.
All right, Michael, you okay to thank everyone tonight? Before we go, I'd like to thank you for giving us the time tonight. I think this is a really important issue. I'd like to take the time to make a submission and please include in your submission consideration around some of the issues we've talked about tonight.
Thanks, George, for having this meeting. I've got to say that I would imagine this would be the most difficult decision that this council had to make in probably living memory. And to make those decisions, we do your input, as we say, but we also have people who know how to run councils. Because just imagine if the council was run like Chelsea, or the water, imagine what the cost would be then. And I want to see 5 days to the councils. Anyway, so thank you again for attending, because it's very important that we have your report. And as I say, it comes down to the councillors to make a decision, so we need that information. Thank you again.
If people would like to stay for a short time, Ryan and I would like to hear your views. If we can get a set consensus of views, we can put forward a submission from the local